First on the programme, parents in the UK are wrongly being arrested and having their children taken into care because of the stigma around female genital mutilation. That's according to some campaigners who say figures which suggest tens of thousands of girls are at risk of FGM in this country are completely inaccurate. Rachel Stonehouse has this exclusive film.
It's a hidden crime that's been illegal in the UK for 35 years. 2019 saw the first successful prosecution for female genital mutilation in this country. But is the push for prosecutions wrongly persecuting innocent families?
The social services never came to our house to, inquire about the allegation. The police never came to my house asking me anything about it. All of a sudden, they just came and removed the children.
All I've known is Wales my whole life.
The Somali community say they are wrongly stigmatised by FGM safeguarding practices.
I went through with it. I would never go through with my daughter, something I experienced.
These policies are having a massive impact, and we're being victimised, being racially profiled, and it's affecting us.
Arrested, children taken into foster care and separated from each other. That's the reality this dad of 5, who we're calling Yusuf, faced following a safeguarding referral by the children's school.
We had a meeting with the children's school to tell them that we were relocating to Somaliland to raise our children there for a while. The children can learn the language, they can meet their grandparents. We had a good meeting with the school.
He and his wife say they were wrongly accused of planning to take their children abroad for FGM and were unprepared for what happened a couple of days after the meeting with the school.
Social services with the police raided my house and removed our children. They arrested my wife and they put our children into foster care. We didn't know what the allegations were. Nobody asked anything, nobody said anything. It was just really a shock. At the time I was at work, I wasn't at home, and when they removed my children from their mother and they arrested the mother, they called me as well. I couldn't answer because of my job. It involves driving. Couldn't answer the phone. And then eventually they texted me saying that I have to come to the police station immediately.
Yusuf's 5 children were separated into different foster homes. He says he and his wife were not able to see them during the 12 days they were in care.
Do you feel that the school were right to raise the flag to social services in the first place?
We trusted that school with our children for 5 years. They knew us. I mean, children must be safeguarded when there's a danger. Yeah, but if the danger is, just assume it. We're supposed to verify it or, investigate it properly. Don't just assume something's going to happen based on somebody's background, from somebody's ethnicity. Just because we are Somalis, that doesn't mean all Somalis support FGM. We don't. We don't.
The case was closed by Thames Valley Police with no further action, and the children were returned to their parents. Slough Children's Services Trust has now apologised to the family and upheld 7 of their complaints. It has also agreed to withdraw an FGM protection order which restricts the family from leaving the country without seeking permission. The Services Trust and Thames Valley Police told us they can't comment on individual cases, but safeguarding is always the #1 priority. Female genital mutilation is the ritual cutting or removal of some or all of the female genitalia and is practiced in some African, Asian and Middle Eastern countries. UNICEF figures estimate 98% of women and girls in Somalia have undergone FGM. But some Somalis living in Britain say these figures are out of date. I've come to Cardiff to speak to some mums who say they are racially profiled for something that previous generations did.
I went through with it. I would never go through with my daughter, something I experienced. So it's sad people still accusing family they do it with their daughters.
And is that something that you ladies all feel, that actually as a community you are stigmatised and racially profiled?
I think the message that from the education department and the public and media, what's happening is they've been told that there's a huge epidemic and 60,000 girls are at risk. That data that's been represented, it's all our daughters who are British born and bred are part of that data. So they're basically racially profiled and said they're at risk of being cut, which really is not.
I've heard of cases from across the UK where parents say they're wrongly being accused of planning to have FGM done to their children. They say there's very little evidence and that it has a long-lasting impact on both them and their children.
Yeah. FGM was done to me when I was about 8 years old, and I became really, really sick, overbled, nearly died.
I've also spoken to women like Nemo, who say because they've had FGM, health professionals sometimes jump to conclusions.
I have a diabetic daughter, so she had this, and she had kind of an urine infection, and the doctor said to me, "And did she have FGM done to her?" My daughter didn't know anything about FGM. She's never heard about it. And then he asked. So yeah, those things do happen, and you get asked in front of the children.
So just because you'd had it done,
Yeah.
there was an automatic
Yeah,
assumption?
automatic. Yeah, exactly.
And how did that make you feel as a
I
mum?
was. Oh my God. It was because I haven't spoken about FGM or had anybody FGM done to in a long, long time.
Come and sit down. The head teacher spoke to you about Somalia and have FGM.
Nemo is part of a Somali parents group in Bristol, which recently put on a play to highlight these type of issues.
We thought about coming together and doing a play and showing the community, the social services, the police, and the general community how the FGM is affecting us everyday life.
The play followed a report by the University of Bristol. Dr. Saffron Carlson led the research and questions how many girls are really at risk of FGM in the UK.
Increasingly, the evidence suggests that it isn't as big a problem as it's assumed to be. That's every case is, we want to see an end to FGM, but the way that the current system is sort of set up appears to sort of criminalise and stigmatise innocent families and families that there's no evidence to suggest that they're going to do, that their children are going to be exposed to FGM.
The university is now looking to do more in-depth research in this area, and the Somali community says now is the time for their voices to be heard.
What we have to do is brave enough now to use media to give our voices, so not those individual anti-FGM campaigners who are put on the media by big media platforms, and they come and speak on our behalf. They are not our voice. Their voice and their story is not the same as ours.
Rachel Stonehouse with that exclusive report. Let's speak now to Zainab Nur from the Hayat Women's Trust. She says the Somali community is being racially profiled. Lethan Bartholomew from the National FGM Centre and Janet File, who's an anti-FGM campaigner from the Royal College of Midwives. Welcome, all of you. Thanks for coming on the programme. Zainab, how many cases do you know of where children have been wrongly taken into care because someone has assumed that the parents want to make their daughter undergo FGM?
Well, I know at least over a dozen cases that
over a dozen
cases of children being taken into care, but we would say hundreds of families have been referred to safeguarding, and they've had social services investigation, and that is women that's attended antenatal appointments or for other health problems at the hospital, and then they've been referred because they have children under 16. So they're told by the health professional, midwife, or we have to refer you to social services, and that's like
because of what reason?
They're saying we have to do it because you're a risk indicator and we're following the guidelines.
Because you are Somali?
Well,
what is the risk indicator?
Because they're Somali and because they're African and they're from a community that used to have a history of doing female circumcision. So they say it's on their risk indicators in terms of the guidelines.
So they're saying we have to do what we're told to do by the government. So,
does that matter as long as girls are being protected?
It does matter, because what I'm saying is we wouldn't refer girls who's been sexually abused and saying they're at risk of sexual abuse in their children. So at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're racial profiling these families. They've been told, oh, because something that happened to you as a child, as a non-consenting child, you're at risk of cutting your child. Mm. And most of these women has very traumatic experience of what happened to them in this generation, and they would not even dare think about doing that to their children.
Do you accept that racial profiling is happening?
Can I just say at the start that female genital mutilation, or FGM, in this country is child abuse, and it is against the law. And the public would expect us to do our utmost to protect children who cannot make the choices or do not give their consent.
Of course they would.
Yes.
But do you think racial profile's happening?
I do not believe racial profiling is happening. I believe that when midwives see women who are pregnant initially, one of the things that they ask them about is FGM, so that they're able to talk to the woman and offer her physical and psychological support.
But we've just heard, and it's whether you believe it or not, that some women are presenting at the doctor's surgery or in hospital who are Somali and had FGM when they were a little girl, and the assumption is made that their children are at risk.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I'm going to come back and say to you, the evidence suggests that if a mother has had FGM, her child is at risk of FGM.
Do you accept that?
If you look at the UNICEF data, and you look at the data here, and you look at all the researchers, it's about 20% of children who are at risk of FGM if their mother has had FGM. So it's a risk indicator rather than profiling.
Yeah. So these risk indicators are discriminatory, and we have equality laws, and they need to be removed from the guidelines.
But if the evidence suggests that if the mother has undergone FGM, there's a chance that the child may undergo FGM, then why should that risk indicator be removed?
This is something that was narrated back in the late 80s, beginning 90s, when I was involved with the anti-FGM campaigns. So this information at that time, if you asked me back in the 80s, there would have been a risk indicator, but the communities, they've had lots of awareness, education. We have third generation, fourth generation of girls in our community have never had female circumcision. Okay.
So, Lethan Bartholomew from the National FGM Centre, what is the accurate picture in terms of risk indicators?
Well, the truth is that if a mother's had FGM, that is a possible indicator. Now, that should be the starting point of being able to ask questions, and ask questions in a way that does not re-traumatize a woman. When we're thinking about FGM and risk is a very dynamic thing. The mother might have moved on, and there's a great possibility that she would not have want to perpetrate any form of violence towards her child. Mm-hmm. But we know that when we look at FGM, it's a wider family network as well, and the community. So yes, you may ask the mother a question, but also you also need to think in terms of, does the risk present elsewhere within that family or within that community?
Sorry, what do you mean?
So the mother might have moved on, but not the grandparents.
Right.
On either side.
Who holds sway?
Yeah. So
who holds sway?
Yeah. So that's the
you need to ask that. Okay.
That's the question. So when we're thinking about FGM as well, we need to think about, when we think about gerontocratic family systems where the elders within the families are the ones who hold sway.
Right. Can I ask both of you, Janet, and also you, Lethan, yes, about the 5 children in our example here. 5 children removed from one family, put into 5 separate foster homes for 12 days, simply because the family said they were taking their kids on holiday to Somaliland. Yes. Is that okay, Janet?
I'm not aware of that case.
We've just described it in our film.
It would be inappropriate for me to comment on that.
Why?
Because I don't know about the case. What I want to say to you...
That's what happened.
Okay. That's what I want to say is that we have a variety of tools to help protect children and safeguard children, and we would want to do that. because the whole idea of FGM is to prevent it happening to a girl. So if a health professional is going to take out an FGM protection order, there are various stages that they need to go through.
Let me ask Lethan, I mean, do you think that's okay?
Well, first of all, I mean, I take the position like Janet as well in saying that I don't know the details of the case, so I really can't comment on it. But what I would say is that, you know, putting myself in those children's shoes and being removed from your parent is never really a comfortable thing. It isn't a nice thing at all. And the fact that the local authority involved in that case apologized and as the piece said, upheld 7 complaints, said that, said that something that happened in that case wasn't correct, and the police as well took the position that they weren't going to investigate the case any longer. So just based on that, I would say it was unfortunate that that actually happened to the children.
Yeah, because saying you're going on holiday to Somaliland doesn't strike me as evidence that your children are necessarily under threat, unless I'm being very, very naive. Janet, go on, you're smiling at me.
Victoria, the issue here is we do not want to go back to the times when children were turning up, asking us for help in a different way, and we were not noticing it. We persuaded the government, we campaigned together with survivors to make sure the law is clarified and to ensure that we protect children. And that's what we're doing. And sometimes along the way in the system, it fails, it falls down. But we do not want to fail another child. One child failed is enough. It's too many.
Would you agree with that? It's actually, perhaps it is worth being overcautious.
No, data doesn't, if we look at data does not state that there's a high incidence of girls being cut in the UK. Yeah, so basically, if you're saying something and you're making blanket statements about our communities, when us who are part of our communities say it doesn't happen, and data doesn't support that, because all the data that's been recorded, a woman who's had historical circumcision and who's attended a healthcare setting, and they're recorded as newly recorded cases.
All right, let me read some messages. This from Hibbo Wadair, who is an FGM survivor. We've talked to her on this programme before. She's tweeted in response to our story, at the moment there's quite a lot of panic and immediate protection orders are being applied and many are wrongfully given. But FGM is still taking place. We mustn't forget that for a minute. I relayed my concerns at a Home Office monthly meeting. I said, and I quote, if you don't set a body to look at the protection orders and how they're used, it will come back to haunt you. Protection orders are absolutely the perfect tool if used properly, and I support them, but we just need a body to oversee how they are being applied. Dr. Laura tweets, I agree with the wider comments and the issues with the stats in your report. We've definitely heard concerns from survivors and their families about social services taking their children away. This fear can prevent survivors accessing care. And one more for now. Joseph says it's called the precautionary principle. If the children had been mutilated, the authorities would be rightly condemned for their appalling negligence. I'm going to thank you all for coming on the programme.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.